Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where what the heck ever happened to March? Yes, over the past few years, March has become a coveted month in the Hollywood release schedule, lining up beautifully with various spring breaks across the US of A. I mean, look at these wonderful past couple of years. 2015 saw Cinderella, Insurgent, yes, those movies used to do well, and also Home. Then in 2016, Zootopia and Batman v Superman. Those movies also used to do well. Poor DCEU. And then also in 2017, we had the greatest March of all time. Logan, Kong Skull Island, Beauty and the Beast, Power Rangers, and The Boss Baby. And there was room for all of them to make serious bank. It brings a tear to one's eye. Surely Hollywood's. I think all of us actually, because that was a damn entertaining month. Also, clearly this year, there was a huge missed opportunity in not releasing an animated movie. It would seem that March is a great month for animation, as the past 3 years have proven. Although, perhaps DreamWorks Animation being taken off the board while it reboots is part of the reason we didn't get one this month. But anyway, as for this month, Red Sparrow and Wrinkle in Time have both stumbled out of the gate, while Tomb Raider, Pacific Rim, and Ready Player One are all expected to open on par with those two movies. Oh my God, seriously. I mean, you have to wonder how the studios feel about that. I'd be like, why did we even make this movie? Why did we spend so much money on it? It's like throwing a big expensive party complete with A-listers, or is that supposed A-listers? I would say that Marvel should be worried about Brie Larson, but I don't know if Marvel really has to worry about anything. But Alicia Vikander seems to not be able to deliver. And because nobody's showing up to these movies. But also no one to show up to a Spielberg movie? What's going on? Well, speaking of parties, part of the problem is that obviously the Marvel party just don't stop. Not only does Black Panther continue to rule over the box office, but with Infinity War right around the corner, even closer around the corner thanks to moving up that release date, sidebar, Overboard has cleverly swept in and claimed the old Infinity War release date. I'm glad they got it. They never would have survived in the now overcrowded, talk about overboard, right? April 13th release date. But anyway, with these Marvel bookends, Kevin Feige and his crew are dominating all entertainment discussion. And not just with the fans, but with the media as well. Because the media knows the only thing the fans want to talk about. The only two movies that have a chance of breaking out in the eye of this Marvel storm are A Quiet Place, because horror is always a wild card, always able to break through. And also the South by Southwest reviews that came out over the weekend for A Quiet Place are scary good. It makes you wonder why Paramount didn't cut a better trailer for it. The other thing is that with A Quiet Place, since there's hardly any talking or any noise in the movie, I do wonder what that movie-going experience will be like with the general public. Who will be able to resist not breaking the silence in the theater? Perhaps you might want to see a matinee on that one. And then also Rampage, because it features Dwayne Johnson doing what he does best. With a jungle motif, right? Not to mention he's successfully taken on Disney before. So maybe, just maybe, he can do it again. But otherwise, all those other movies are about to be mad tightened by Infinity War. Now, it would seem that while Feige might have been worried about whether or not audiences would still be interested in his Avengers after the contracts for his original Trinity played out, well, he need no longer worry, because he has a new star. In fact, a whole set of stars. Yes, Black Panther is not only the undisputed king of the 2018 box office, but of the all-time box office. And that hype is clearly fueling Infinity War, where Black Panther and friends, not to mention his homeland, are heavily featured. It's almost like an instant mini-sequel. And ironically, Black Panther was likely made a big part of Infinity War to generate interest in Black Panther. And now it's ended up being the other way around. Don't be surprised if Marvel intentionally uses this slingshot technique, that's what I'm calling it, in the future. Something they can do because Feige has built a well-oiled machine. And this serves as just another example as to why all the other studios want a well-oiled machine of their own so that they can do the slingshot technique. I think at this point, no one else even has the infrastructure built up to do it. But I bet Feige, I mean, look for this. When we start to see that, they've booked a bunch of to-be-determined release dates for Marvel movies in the future, I bet you'll start to see this play out. It's very, very smart. So in its fourth weekend, Black Panther, and also, by the way, even if it was an accident, Kevin Feige keeps having fabulous accidents. And he realizes when it's good, and he makes it a non-accident in the future. So amazing. So in its fourth weekend, Black Panther, yes, has joined the $1 billion club as Twitter celebrated on Saturday. Still in large thanks to its phenomenal domestic haul. And now Black Panther is the 7th highest grossing film in the US of all time. It'll probably stay at number 7, although I think there is a small chance it could climb to number 6. As for worldwide, it's now at number 21. And the big question has become if it can make it into the top 10 of all time, where 1.27 for Frozen, friendly fire for Disney because they just are full of so much wind. But if that's the number to beat to make it into the top 10. Now, it finally hit China this weekend, the last country that it had to hit. And it's worth noting, though, and I think this is important, that Black Panther didn't even need China to get to $1 billion. That's fabulous. So often, everybody worries about that Chinese release date for the big blockbusters that would make or break it. And Black Panther, again, didn't need China. But it's going to get a nice chunk of change from China. It opened, as was recently projected, with around 60 to 70 million. The final numbers are still coming in. And that's one of Marvel's best openings there. It's not the best, I think, because Black Panther is a new character. And also, this is new for Chinese audiences. I think we should give them credit for turning out to the degree that they have for a new audience and a new type of actor, to put it delicately, than they have in the past. It is now on track and should do 100 to 120 million in China. I know some of you will say, well, it's surprised here in the US, but that would be amazing, again, for Black Panther. And the opening coincides with that projection. So that 127 number for the top 10, to break into the top 10 of all time, is not only in range, but likely. Could it do something with a 1.5 in it? That would be amazing. I think it's unlikely, but hey, I think we've all learned with Black Panther to say it's not impossible. It's also worth noting that Black Panther is the only film without a white lead. Even the Fast and Furious movies had Paul Walker, Jason Statham, or Charlize Theron on any of these box office charts, and that is a huge accomplishment. Now, some of you might be like, well, did A Wrinkle in Time just ruin everything with its disappointing box office debut? I don't think so. I think that Disney's 1-2 diversity punch has still loudly been heard in Hollywood. And that's not just that audiences of color are hungry to see themselves in top-notch studio fare, and that white audiences are interested in those movies as well, but that tokenism simply isn't enough anymore. And audiences are smart enough to tell the difference. That's a big part of that equation. And you can see that by the fascinating demographic breakdown of the audience for both films. Now look at this. This is so crazy. So Black Panther had an almost equal percentage of African American and Caucasian audience members show up, 37% and 36%. But the much smaller audience for A Wrinkle in Time was overwhelmingly Caucasian at 54%. Wow! So the audience that Ava DuVernay largely made it for didn't show up, with just 18% of the audience being African American. The Latino numbers shook out to be about the same. And also, as I sadly predicted, the turnout for A Wrinkle in Time was overwhelmingly female, with an ad campaign that not only didn't include male characters, really put them in the back, but seemed to have no interest in appealing to male audiences. And that number is correct. Friday's audience was 70% female. 70%! That kind of gender divide in either direction is unheard of these days. Well, at least it was until now. As for Wrinkle in Time's cinema score, it rounded out to a B, so that's not particularly promising going forward, with the under 25 set enjoying the film far more than the over 25 set. But don't worry about Ava DuVernay. As I noted in my review for A Wrinkle in Time, the media, critics, and many in the entertainment industry have worked very hard to protect DuVernay from any repercussions for her own work. I love it. It's like she totally did it to herself, but they protected her from herself. And if she's smart, she'll simply go back to making the smaller type of movies that only really need such support, rather than a major blockbuster which needs audiences to get behind it. Disney, though, should watch screenwriter Jennifer Lee like a hawk on Frozen 2 if it's not already too late. Although, is it ever too late for a movie? I mean, they're just doing reshoots on Deadpool 2 weeks, like a month or so before it hits theaters, because it had such a disastrous advanced test screening. Wow. So, and even the first Frozen was reworked significantly at the last minute. If you might recall, they were not putting out a lot of footage, and some of the footage that came out, we never saw in the actual movie. Oh, it's a little bit like what happens with some comic book movies, interestingly enough. But anyway, as for the rest of the top 10, I think we can all see why Toby Kebbell has agreed to make that ABC network television pilot, because surely Hurricane Heist broke him. And word of mouth seems to have kicked in for game night. Yay! It couldn't have happened to a nicer and better movie. As this week, it enjoyed the best hold. While Jumanji, which just hit streaming, by the way, and Apple did such a nice job for it. They really showcased it on the iTunes interface. It was really cool. It got like comic book movie treatment, which I thought was fabulous. But it finally fell to number 10, while The Greatest Showman dropped out of the top 10. But wow, let's just take a moment to recognize two historic runs. And meanwhile, Peter Rabbit has almost hit 100 million stateside, which is pretty much the only country where it's currently playing. And for those of you outside the US, does such a haul make you more inclined to see the movie when it bunny hops to your country, most likely in the next month or so? And then as for this coming weekend, Tomb Raider is set to debut with a good 20 million less than the very first Lara Croft movie, which was $2,001. Oh, that's so bad. Alicia Vikander's got a lot of splaining to do. I think it's actually pretty self-explanatory. I guess she's got some excuses to come up with. She's got about a week to do it. And then, unfortunately, things aren't looking too good for Love, Simon either, which might have had a few too many advanced screenings. Everyone who's interested in the movie has already seen it. It's also worth pointing out that LGBT movies do not have a strong box office track record, and Love, Simon, a mainstream approach to the subject matter, was supposed to change that, so here's hoping it ends up being a pleasant surprise. And that's this week's Movie Math. As always, thanks for going over the box office with me. Leave your thoughts down below, including not just what you saw this past weekend, but what you plan to see this coming weekend. And what do you think happened in March this year? Again, write those thoughts down below. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.